I do imagine we could have growth rates of 4 or 5% for a period of time there. I do think that Scott Bessant is correct. I think he's trying to be cautious. I think he's holding back on what he may actually believe, but he's not an economist like I am, so I can talk to you. I would not be surprised if we had growth rates of 4%, 5% in the next 3 years, some periods of that time happening, and that would change the whole story. That will change the whole story of what happens to revenues. That'll change the whole story of what happens to welfare. With that type of growth, we'll get lower unemployment, we'll get more people employed. All of that stuff will happen there. I am very optimistic that the economy is in for a new era of prosperity.
Welcome to Thoughtful Money. I'm its founder and your host, Adam Taggart. Well, now that President Trump has set into motion the main pillars of his economic policy, trade reform, tax cuts, and deregulation, what should we expect from here? Now, I can think of few better people to hear from on this topic than today's guest, who's one of the key economic advisors to President Trump and his cabinet members. Today, we're fortunate to welcome back to the program Dr. Arthur Laffer. He was the first to hold the title of Chief Economist at the Office of Management and Budget in the early 70s. He then later served as a member of President Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board. He's perhaps best known for developing the Laffer curve, a model for determining the optimal balance between tax revenues and economic growth. Dr. Laffer, thanks so much for joining us today.
Key economic advisor. I love that phrase. Can I just print it? I mean, I have some inputs, but I don't think I'm the, well, never mind. But it's really fun. And I think
I don't know. I think you should maybe get a tattoo of that. And look, you're being modest because I was just listening to, this was just a few weeks ago, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant. He was testifying before Congress. I believe they were grilling him on the One Big Beautiful Bill, and they asked, which economists, are behind this bill, and you were the first name out of Secretary Bessant's mouth. So you clearly have made a big impression on him.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, look, so much has happened since the last time you and I talked, Dr. Laffer. President Trump had been elected, but he actually hadn't stepped into office yet. You were very excited where he might take things. Now that we are, 150 days or so into this administration, which has moved with lightning speed, what kind of grade do you give their economic deployment so far?
Well, I don't know if I want to give a grade, but he got the agendas and it's in place. I mean, when you look at this BBB, and I forgive me for calling it that, but everyone else does.
That's fine.
The big, beautiful bill, that was essential to really going to the next stage. In that bill, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was made permanent almost, and that is really important. Not so much because it lowers taxes, it doesn't. It keeps tax rates from rising. The 37% personal income tax now will be there. That's permanent. It doesn't pop back up to 39.6. The depreciation schedules now are expensing levels, which they were going to pop up to 20 years depreciation schedule some of the years back. All of that. Likewise, you're going to get the death tax is not going to go up dramatically, these are all very big pluses. The corporate tax was already permanent, the 21%, so that didn't change that. In the BBB, he also got all of his big legislative agendas. He could all the departments and agencies bills that often are done by defense budget, and each one separately. He plopped them all into one thing. So he has his border security as his defense budget. He has all this other stuff in there that he wants in there. He has school choice, etc. When I look at this bill, I am ecstatic that it passed. I think it's really very important. It's a huge plus for the country. The only thing I'm really disappointed in is there was no bipartisanship at all. And, but Trump does not engender bipartisanship, to be honest with you. And I'm not expecting it anytime soon. But I am disappointed that we didn't get any really come across. What would have happened had that bill not passed is a very ugly picture, my way of thinking about it. And that. So here I look at the bill. The legislative agenda for the Trump administration has been passed and it's in law. All the rest of the legislative agenda for the next 3.5 years, important and all that, but nothing critical like what just happened. That's entering a new era there. And so that makes me very pleased with what's going on. I look at the five kingdoms, which I talked to you about before, taxation. In that bill, he also got no tax on tips, which is a no-brainer. I mean, why would you spend $1 billion trying to collect 100 million? And why would you want people to feel like they're cheats when everyone's going to cheat? I mean, if you're supposed to pay taxes on tips, everyone's going to cheat on their taxes, and you don't want that You don't want to put in laws that you know everyone's going to violate and break the law. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think that makes sense. I think no tax on overtime makes a lot of sense. This is exactly when you need the nurses to work overtime because there's been a calamity. You want them to get the highest marginal pay to incentivize them there. Why would you go and tax that overtime during a crisis? I think it makes a lot of sense to have no taxes on overtime. I think if a deduction of interest on vehicle purchases, loans makes perfect sense as well, as long as interest income is taxable, interest expense should be deductible. And lastly, the tax on Social Security benefits being reduced, I don't like from the standpoint of economics, from the standpoint of politics and fairness, it maybe makes sense. But this bill has been put into place. It is the whole Trump agenda. He's got it. And no, everything else now is refinements coming to that agenda. So I'm excited about what the future is, and I think it's open field running from now on. But
Okay.
don't think you're ever going to get a recess, a timeout, a chance to take a nap. No sort of breather space. None of that is ever going to happen. It's going to be a bumpy ride in a wagon down from the mountaintop on a rocky road, jarring and jolting all the time. There'll be no. I claim that God made it there specifically with me in mind. There's no chance of rest for the wicked, and you're going to see this going on and on as you see it now with tariffs and negotiating with Japan and South Korea. It's just never going to stop. Believe me when I tell you.
Okay, and we are going to get to tariffs in just a little bit here, but let me drill into taxation for a moment. And actually, even before I do that, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is about the prospect for the midterms. And I know you're an economic analyst, not a political analyst,
That's
Dr.
correct.
Laffer, but was part of the strategy of the One Big Beautiful Bill was to try to get all this stuff, the key pillars, just passed early so that no matter what happens in the midterm, the things the administration cares the most about would have hopefully, which it now looks like, got
It did.
enforced before they
Yeah.
might lose Congress. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that may be true. Your logic is impeccable on that, and they're all in. That's what I mean. It's over. The legislative agenda for this administration has been accomplished. It's happened in the first 6 months, and it's going to got 3.5 years to go. And this is the one big beautiful bill that needed to be passed, and it was passed. So his agenda is locked in stone, and now he can go on other topics, other issues. But this is bang done, and it doesn't matter now. It does matter, but it doesn't matter nearly as much now what happens in the midterm elections.
Okay. So if the president is trying to build the next golden age of America, which is what he calls it,
Yes.
which I believe, and feel free to comment on this, you probably think odds are good for that because I know last couple of times we've
I
talked,
do.
you believe that, hey, if we get some of this stuff done, you've seen the playbook before and it happens faster than people expect. Is the
Yes.
foundation for that golden era now in place, given what the
Yes.
administration's done in the first 150 days?
Yes, it's as much in place as it could possibly be. That's why I was pointing out all the aspects of the bill is, yeah, they have. Now, there are lots of other things I'd like to see done. For example, Powell, I'd like to see Kevin Warsh replace Powell. But
Okay.
I think an inflation standpoint, we don't have a real risk of high inflation in the next year and a half. I don't think. I'm wrong a lot, but I don't think we do. I think he's got all the stuff on the border security, defense, and all those things. They're done. The tax bill is made permanent. That's all done. The death tax has not been. I mean, all of that stuff is in place. So his agenda is pretty well locked in, with minor revisions and additions and subtractions that could go on. But this is his agenda, and it's been passed.
Okay, so I'm
And
being overly simplistic here, but we're maybe now transitioning from strategy to execution.
exactly. No, that's perfect. You're right.
Okay, all
He
right.
got it. I mean, I thought he would get it, and he got it. And I, He has the ability to lock the party in. This is why I was very disappointed that there wasn't one Democrat voting for it. I really wished there, but that didn't happen. So my wishes did not come true.
I'm curious. I do want to talk about the lack of bipartisanship here, and more importantly, I want to get to the concerns that the two Republicans who didn't vote for the bill, but many others talked about their concerns about it was basically the deficit, right? They didn't feel that there was enough deficit reduction elements in the bill. Obviously, a famous kind of
Yeah.
friction between Elon Musk and the president over this. But so I want to get to that in just a second. But real
Okay.
quick, uh, let's say it was even closer, right, that the bill wasn't going to pass. Do you think it still would have remained completely bipartisan, or do you think if push came to shove, some of the Democrats would have said, "Look, if these tax cuts don't get renewed, and we have, at least as the administration was selling it, the largest tax hike in history in America," would they have really wanted their names on that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't heard any skivvies on that and any side conversations of anyone who said, look, if it push comes to shove, I'll have to do it. I do think some of the Republicans who voted against it were granted permission to do that.
Mhm.
I do think they were in there. Susan Collins for sure in Maine, very unpopular the bill, and she's a wonderful lady, and I'm sure and I think Rand Paul, if push had come to shove, would have voted for the bill if his vote had been needed. Um, I do, and I don't know about Tillis. I think Tillis is now at odds with the president, and he's not going to run for reelection. But but no, I don't know of any Democrats who said that, if you really need me, I'll do it. I don't know, and I haven't heard any stories about it either.
Okay. Me personally, and this is just my opinion, I was pretty confident the bill was going to pass in some shape or form, only
I was
because
too.
I don't
I
think
was too.
anybody wanted to see that happen, right? Those tax cuts go up, yeah.
Yeah, but plus I couldn't stand watching the damn thing. I mean, it was drama on the front stage when there was all this noise and thing about nothing. It's going to pass. As you
Right.
said, it's going to pass, and it
Yeah.
had to pass. And there was no way it couldn't pass, and it did pass. And now we've got the road clear for the next 3.5 years. It's wide open running.
Okay. So to those people who are concerned about the deficit and are thinking, hey, President Trump, you talked a really big game about deficit and even debt reduction, on the
Yeah,
campaign. How come we're not seeing the delivery on that here? What would your answer to them
yeah.
be?
My answer would be is you can't reduce the deficit by forecasting. It's not a matter of forecasting; it's a matter of what happens. And these guys in the CBO don't have a model worth a hill of poop.
Hmm.
And everyone knows it. And everyone knows that what they did with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. As you know, federal revenues went up after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act substantially. But in the 2 years following the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, federal tax revenues rose relative to the prior 2 years by more than the prior 2 years had to the prior 2 years to that. There was a surge in revenue. And the CBO had huge deficits, 1.5, $1.8 trillion. We know their model is terrible, but they have the House rules, which make you think that they are talking about actual deficits. They're not. They're just playing a game of forecasts of deficits. This bill will reduce the deficits from what they otherwise would have been. Believe me, it will lead to more growth and it'll lead to more prosperity in spite of everything these forecasters are telling you. So all of the deficit discussion, or much of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is just hooey. Now, the Doge stuff is not hooey, where you actually cut government spending programs and stuff. That is serious. That doesn't have a dynamic impact that would make it go the opposite side. But all the tax cuts that they said would lead to further deficits, that's ridiculous. Those tax cuts will lead to faster growth and will lead to less deficits, not more. Laffer curve. That's just all there is to it.
That's just all there is to. Okay, and
And
this
these
is
guys just don't get it. And they just don't get it time and time and time again. Going back to Kennedy, going back to Reagan, I mean, they just miss it every time. They say if you cut tax rates by 10%, you're going to lose revenues by 10%. And that's not true. There'll be more work. There'll be less tax sheltering. And revenues, especially from the highest income groups, go up, not down. I mean, you could look at my book. I mean, taxes have consequences with Dr. Jane Sinkfield and Dr. Brian Dimitrovic. That book, every single time we've raised tax rates in the top 1% of income earners, tax revenues have gone down from them. every time we've lowered tax rates in the top 1% of income earners, tax revenues from them have gone up. They stop using lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists, et cetera, and revenues go up. It's every time, but you'll never get the forecasters to tell you that. Never.
Got it. Okay. And that's just it's not just tax cuts that is expected to drive growth here, right? For at least on the administration strategy, it's
True.
deregulation, it's even
Thank
tariff
you.
revenue, right?
School choice is in there. All sorts of other stuff. Enterprise zones is in there. Not only that, but medical transparency is in it. All of these will be very positive for growth. There's some crap in there too, but by the way, don't let me, please, don't let me say all this stuff is wonderful. It's far from wonderful, but the percentage of bad stuff is very low in this bill relative to most of these types of bills.
Okay. And I'm just curious, and I'm asking you to postulate here, but is the crap that's in there just pork that you kind of had to give to get enough people to vote this thing? Just sort of politics as usual?
But politics as usual, as defined by a congressman or a congressman's staff. We can't do that. Oh my God! It looks like we're hurting the poor. It looks like, let's just say work requirements. I mean, who in their right mind wouldn't want work requirements for these funds to come in? If you're getting disability insurance, you should be disabled. Otherwise, you should be getting it, or you should be, putting those work requirements in there on these programs makes perfect sense to me. Now, will it be honed correctly so that it doesn't miss some good people and hit some bad people? Of course, there are going to be mistakes in this, and you can't really regulate the eligibility from a bill in Congress passed there for a little town in, let's say, Alaska. But they're trying to bring that type of concept in, and I think it will be a good macro concept, and I think it will work in the right direction.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I guess last question on this. So growth cures a lot of ills, right?
Yes.
And Treasury Secretary Bessant, I believe you feel he's right here, is he's saying, look, we're going to grow so much that we're going to get the deficit back down to the sort of 3% of GDP. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to get there largely through growth. For folks that say, okay, that's good, but I'd also like to see some more discipline on the deficit going forward. Do you think we will, or do you think we'll just be so happy that we're growing that, whatever, we'll spend as much as we can get away with?
Well, we've never had discipline on the spending side. So to imagine that we can make it even worse is hard for me to imagine. This administration will make it worse. But the imperative there from Congress, you're spending other people's money, and these people have no incentive whatsoever to actually use discipline on government spending. They just have no incentive. And when they don't make any personal benefit from reducing spending, it's hard to imagine they've done it. I mean, let me ask you the question this way: which would you prefer? Now we're going to talk about the same amount of money. Which would you prefer? Increasing benefits to people who don't work, or reducing tax rates on people who do work?
I think everybody would pick the latter. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the big choice. Now, the way they would list that is those would be two equal events in the budget process. Now, they're not even close to equal. Increasing benefits to people who don't work is going to increase the deficit. Reducing tax rates on people who do work is not going to increase the deficit by a static revenue amount, the same amount. You know that. And yet the budget people, CBO, would say those are two exactly the same dollar amounts in the budget thing. And they're not. And everyone with a lick of sense knows they're not.
Right. And just to be clear, everybody knows they're not because of the Laffer curve.
Yeah, but because they know themselves. If you get paid, if you get a lower tax rate, you're willing to work more.
Right, exactly.
If you had no overtime tax, and you're a firefighter and you need to work 80 hours, you're more willing to work those 80 hours if you don't have tax on the overtime than if you do have it. Everyone knows that. It ain't rocket surgery, as Larry Gatlin says. And when you look at these things going forward too, and and the bill and all this stuff, it's a very positive development, this bill, and makes my forecast for what's going to happen to GDP growth go up, not down. Now, will it be? Let me give you the biggest example. Reagan tax bill of 81 reduced tax rates by 25% is what it did. It really didn't, but it moved brackets way out. They phased that in. You got a 5% cut on October 1st, 1981, a 10% cut on July 1st, 1982, and a 10% cut on July 1st, 1983. All right? As you know, there's no such thing as a mid-year tax rate reduction. The IRS does not ask you which month you earned which dollar. You play it against one tax table. So
Right.
what they did was they prorated that 5% in October of 81 over the whole year as being 1.25% cut in tax rates over 81.
Okay.
Then in 82, you got the 5% from 81, and you got half of the 10% from 82. So it was a 10% cut across the board in 82. And then 83, you got a 20% cut. You got the big tax cut there. We phased in the tax cuts back then. Now, if you know they're going to cut tax rates next year, what are you going to do this year? You're going to defer all the income you can to earn it in the year when you get it. And it caused the
Exactly.
deep recession 81, 82. Now, it did cause the deep recession 81, 82. The deferral of the tax cuts did nothing else. Now, on January 1st, 83, the tax cuts took effect. In the next year and a half to June 30th, 1984, in that 6-quarter period, in that year and a half period, that 18-month period, U.S. real GDP grew by 12%. 12%. That's an
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
8%. That's 8% per annum compound rate. That's the record. Now, are we going to get to those growth rates? No, we are not. And the reason why I don't think we are is it took the deep recession of 81, 82 to give us the big bounce back of 83, 84. Okay.
Hmm.
We didn't get that big decline down to warrant that type of bounce back up. We didn't. But if you ask me, could we have growth rates of 4 or 5% per year? In the future? Yeah, we could. I mean, the level of these policy changes are significant and they're not little. And we could get the participation rate rising substantially in the US economy. We could get average hours increasing. We could get all sorts of things happening to increase things. 100% expensing of capital purchases really makes a difference as to how much you invest. It really, really does. And all of these things put together. So I am envisioning, and I'm very optimistic, as you can tell, about the future. Maybe that's because I'm 85 and won't have to deal with it forever. Just joking aside, I do imagine we could have growth rates of 4 or 5% for a period of time there. I do think that Scott Bessant is correct. I think he's trying to be cautious. I think he's holding back on what he may actually believe, but he's not an economist like I am, so I can talk to you. I would not be surprised if we had growth rates of 4%, 5% in the next 3 years, some periods of that time happening. And that would change the whole story. That will change the whole story of what happens to revenues. That'll change the whole story of what happens to welfare. With that type of growth, we'll get lower unemployment, we'll get more people employed. All of that stuff will happen there. I am very optimistic that the economy is in for a new era of prosperity. And that I'll just share with you. I don't share that with everyone because it doesn't change the outcome, my telling you what my thoughts really are. And if it doesn't change the outcome, I might as well be cautious. But with you, I'll tell you that I do think this is really the beginning of a new era. And I'm very
Well,
excited about it.
I appreciate your confidence in me and in my listeners. And two things you say that give me some optimism. One is I think the fact that you are 85 and that you're optimistic about this, because you give me the sense you expect to see these benefits
I
in your
sure as
lifetime.
hell do. I'm going to live longer than you are. I just
I'm
thought
sure
I'd
you
mention.
probably will.
I will. I will. I mean, I had a dream that I would check out about at 137. So that gives me 52 more years. So I think I'll be able to see the Trump era, and even in retrospect, I can look back at it and say it was a really great time to be alive. Just
Well,
joking. I'm
given your
having
level
some
of
fun with
energy,
you. I hope you don't
no,
mind.
no, given your level of energy, I'm surprised you're not picking a higher number out there, because I can see it. But also the other thing that gives me optimism is that this is a playbook that you are familiar with. In fact, you've been advocating for it. You've been advising the
Yep, that's
Trump
true.
administration about it. So you're speaking, to a fair degree from experience here. This isn't just an
This isn't
intellectual
my first
exercise.
rodeo. I mean, I was in the White House at 29 years old. I was George Shultz's right-hand person in the Nixon administration. I was the first chief economist at the OMB. So yeah, I've been doing this one a long time. I've been doing it in other countries with Thatcher, with all these. I'm doing a huge thing right now in Britain, a very large project there with all the former prime ministers and stuff. And it's my volume there. It's going. So I'm really excited about this stuff. I've been here, and I feel very good about the U.S. economy over the next 3, 4, 5 years. I I don't think Trump is going to give you a chance to have a breather. Trump, it's just not in his nature.
Nature, yeah.
He's just right, those old cowboy wagons. Imagine up on top of a mountain in a rocky mountain, and you're sitting there bare-butted on the wooden platform, and that thing's been let go, and it's bouncing down that path. It's just bang, ba-doom, ba-da. But you're gonna get no moment for rest, for peace. There's never going to be, well, is that done now? We've finally got the trade. No, the trade deals will be going on and on and on unless the Supreme Court stops him from doing that. I mean, he's never going to stop negotiating. He's never going to stop it. That's just in his nature. And I think so far he's been doing just a great job on it, but God, is he exhausting. I
Well,
mean,
let me, that's a great segue then into this next part, which is, and before I do, just let me remind folks, you've mentioned a number of administrations that you've been involved with. I think the ones we've mentioned so far have been Republican, but I just want to underscore, you have been advising administrations on both sides of the aisle. You
true.
know, you're on Team America from an economic standpoint. You don't care who's sitting at the
Yeah, well,
resolute
I
desk.
did Jerry Brown's flat tax when he ran for
Right.
president. I did that. I was Gary Hart's economist when he was running there. I've been worked with Democrats. I'm a Kennedy Democrat. I'm a Reagan Republican. I'm a Trump Republican, and I'm a Clinton Democrat. So which ones do you like? Pick them. Now, Bill Clinton did not like it that I thought he was a great president. And when I always added I wouldn't let my daughter intern in that White House,
Well,
uh,
yeah.
that may have turned him off a little bit. But he was a great president. Bill Clinton was a great president. He really was. And so was John F. Kennedy. I mean, really damn good. And so was Ronald Reagan. And so was Donald Trump. I mean, it's economics and it's all economics. And that's it. And if you like low rate, broad based flat tax, spending restraints, sound money, minimal regulations, and free trade, you've got my vote, period. I'm with you.
Okay, so let's go to free trade. So obviously, President Trump has tackled trade, and I think tackled it with an aggression rarely, if ever, seen from
Yeah,
a president. And I know that you don't like tariffs uh, per se. I think the last time we talked, you said you don't mind using them as a trade negotiating tool.
that's right.
So it sounds like you're actually feeling pretty good about the way things have unfolded so far on trade, but don't let me put words in your mouth. And yes, it's like that runaway Calistoga wagon. I mean, every day it's different news, and just the past 24 hours, we've seen,
It just doesn't stop. It just doesn't
letters going to
stop.
all these countries and
Oh my God.
50% tariffs on copper, and I mean, it's just
There,
we got whiplash. But do you like the direction it's headed in?
yes, so far. I wish it would calm down so I could get a breather and not be panicked every minute. And when he says I'm the tariff man and I'm going to raise the tariff, it scares the hell out of me. I know what happens to tariffs in the economy. It's not pretty. And I know what happens when you reduce tariffs to the economy. It is beautiful. That's Kennedy and that's Reagan. I mean, the NAFTA and Kennedy round tariff negotiation, Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan on NAFTA did a great job. And the Nixon stuff and the Hoover stuff was horrible. So we all know the consequences. And so when he says these words, I can't help but hear the words. But when I look at what he does, I'm very pleased so far with what he's done. I was just in Indonesia between our last one. I just got back 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I was over in Israel as well. And when I was over there, I met with the chief negotiator from Indonesia with Scott Bessant. She negotiated with Scott Bessant, Kevin Hassett, and the team over there. And she was very complimentary about them and how they understood all the trade stuff and wanted to make a better deal. She was very flattering and very complimentary about Donald Trump and the tariff discussions that they were having. When I was with Netanyahu, and I spent some quality time one-on-one with him. There we talked about trade and tariffs there and stuff. I was very comfortable and pleasantly surprised by Netanyahu's willingness to really work and make it right for trade with the U.S. So all the personal examples, and Bukele, when I was down there with him in El Salvador, he was perfectly willing to have a free trade deal with the U.S. And when I was with Malay, and this was probably 6 months ago with Malay in Argentina, he wanted to do a bilateral trade deal with Trump. And
Mhm.
Trump took it to Trump, and obviously, and Trump has his own plans, but they all want to get the free trade deals done. And I'm really pleased with that. Now, when it comes to a specific sector of their economy that they have protected and they get political votes from this group, maybe they'll change their minds on some of this stuff. Well, we do need a tariff on this to protect that. I don't know, but I'm really pleased with the direction of what's actually happening, not the words that are said. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm kind of detecting from you that you've got confidence that these trade deals, which the administration says are going to get struck, but some people are like they're skeptical. It sounds like you've got confidence they're eventually going to get struck in
But they
some.
scared the hell out of me too. Just for the record, the words they say, the stuff, it scares the hell out of me. I don't like words like that. I don't use them like that. It's not my style, but it is Trump's style. And he does do it. And when I look at the results, I'm very pleased with the results that Trump achieves. And I'm very pleased when I'm with him and I talk with him. He does know all the factual stuff about what can happen with bad tariff policy, with good tariff policy.
Okay.
He's not ignorant in any way, shape, or form. He's about as knowledgeable on this stuff as anyone I've seen, and he knows it, and he loves prodding me. He pokes me, and he thinks it's really funny to watch me scream. And God, but but he really does know the stuff, knows how to negotiate, and I do feel comfortable. There's no one person I can think of whom I'd rather have as president of the United States than Donald Trump. And that includes me. He is really, really good at this. He's got the high energy, he's got the knowledge, he's got the background, he's got the abilities, and he actually likes being president. I've never seen a president that actually liked it, but he loves it. And he likes doing. I with a meeting. I think I don't know if I told you this, but I was in the meeting and I think I came back out and I took copious notes afterwards and I really wrote it all up detail, which just were my files. But we had 42 topics we covered in an hour and 15 minutes. All of
Wow.
them. And I went through it each one, and each one of them went bang, 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 bang. When I left the room, I was exhausted. I went and took a nap and all that. He had another person come in and do another hour and a half of 42-ish. He just doesn't stop or slow down, which is what you want, but it's not what you want if you want to take a nap.
Wow. Well, all right. Well, look, on these trade deals, I'm curious, like, we struck a deal with the UK, right?
Yeah,
When you look at that deal, do you feel like, yeah, that's actually what we want? And if the future trade deals are like the UK deal, is this all headed in the right direction?
I think so. Yes. And I do think that, I mean, you're going to have problems with Canada, of course. And the UK one, Keir Starmer had very little room to move. I mean, Britain is in his special situation there, but there's some other countries where he's going to do deals with, like he did with Vietnam, and there's some others that have gone along. But I wouldn't look at any of those deals as being permanent in the sense that they're not going to see him change a year from now. Something else is going to happen. I think once he can get China and Russia to Russia to have a ceasefire with Ukraine, an armistice, if you will. I think Russia will then become very well treated by the U.S. I think the same thing is true if China uh, gets its paws off Taiwan.
Hmm.
I think that would be a major thing for him to reward China then with much better tariff deals and stuff. So he's going to use the tariffs not only for economic advantage and gameplay, uh, but he's also going to use them to get foreign policy results, peace through
Right.
strength. And that's what we want. We want to get Kim Jong Un to get rid of the nuclear weapons. We really do. And if it means having free trade with North Korea, God bless them, let's do it. I mean, we want to have Iran brought back into the family of nations. They weren't moving. What he did, I don't know if it's right or not. I'm not a military expert, but it sure does change the game. And I think offering Iran, if they do get rid of it and don't try to do it, offering them free trade and prosperity is the right way to go. Just stop your belligerence, and and that's true with Gaza, that's true with Russia, that's true with China. So I love it that he knows how to negotiate peace through strength, very much the way Ronald Reagan did with Gorbachev. I don't know if you remember the treaties we did with them and the free
Sure.
trade. It was just super what Reagan did, and I think Trump is right down that same alleyway. I mean, I'm so far I'm very pleased with what's happened.
Okay. And so it sounds like you feel pretty optimistic about America's prospects given the playbook we're running right now. Assume for a moment, and folks, we have no idea if this is going to happen, but let's assume what you just said comes to pass over the rest of the administration, right? We get peace through strength or whatever, but we enter
Yeah,
into greater free trade relations with these more adversarial nations that we have today.
yeah.
How much of a force multiplier is that? to America's prosperity
A
economically?
lot, really a lot. I mean, it's a lot. And prosperity measured in dollars and cents, it's big, but prosperity in a broader sense of, of American
Safety,
society.
lives lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beyond compare. It's just wonderful. It's like Reagan's piece, the 8 years, no wars. I mean, it's just really was a wonderful time to be alive and to be an American. You felt good every day. You watched the stock market go up and all this stuff. And I am looking forward to an era just like that going forward. The difference between Reagan and Trump is Reagan made the mistake of phasing in the tax cuts in his first 2 years. So we had a big downturn. And then we got a much bigger upturn. We're not going to have the downturn, so the upturn's not going to be as big with Trump, in my view. But I'm looking to very substantial good growth, 4%, maybe even a couple periods there in 5% range. But a 3% is, I think that's at the low end of the forecast there.
Low end of the achievable. Okay.
Yeah, I think it really is much more than achievable. Now that the bill is passed, I think it's the probable. I mean, it was achievable before the bill was passed because we needed the bill to pass, but now the bill's been passed. I mean, it's in stone. So I am very optimistic that what was necessary to do has already been done. Now, we can always add on and do more and better stuff for
Right.
price transparency, deregulation, all this other stuff. And a good Fed chairman like Kevin Warsh would be really great for keeping interest rates and inflation low. We need someone who understands that. But I mean, we've done a lot now to lock into place that growth. I'm very excited.
Okay. So we've talked about taxes. We talked about trade.
Yeah.
Real quick, deregulation. How big of a leg of the stool is that going to be?
Well, the energy one you can see already. You can see the price of oil coming down substantially. You can see the nuke production will be energy independent very shortly, which is a really big deal for the U.S. And I would expect those oil prices to continue to come down, just the way they did when Reagan deregulated in the 80s. They kept coming down. I think it went down from $30 a barrel to $4, about $14 or something like that. Really amazing drop. And I'd expect to see that. But the one I'm really looking forward to is price transparency, medical price transparency. It's about 17, 18% of the US GDP. When you go into a hospital or a healthcare provider, you have no idea what the transactions price is. You just hand them your insurance card.
Right.
You have no idea what the efficacy of the drugs are. You have no thing there. You have no idea what the other people's records are. They use this word HIPAA to protect their monopoly on situations there. The president has already signed an executive order in his first term on price transparency. I think he's going to go through this. And this could be, in my mind, the biggest thing of all. I wrote a paper, and I wouldn't mind you sharing it with your audience if you'd like. I called it Le Croix de Santé. I did it with my co-author. It looks at life expectancy and costs as a share of GDP from the U.S. with regard to the OECD, and it really does show just what's causing the problem and how to cure it. We need transactions prices to be posted, and that you go into a hospital and you know what the price of a procedure is, and you know what it will cost there, whether you pay for it in cash or pay for it in insurance, doesn't matter. You'll know all of that stuff, and you know what the results will be. If we got that, that could add huge amounts to GDP and reduce the deficit enormously and reduce taxes enormously. And that's the one I'm really looking to because that's bigger even than energy independence. It's really a big deal, and not many people are talking about it.
All right. Well, look, I believe the last time you were on the channel, we talked about this briefly, and you sent me the paper. So
Good,
I have that posted at
good. I'm
thoughtfulmoney.com/Laffer.
glad you do. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude,
So
because
folks, if you want to read that, just go to that URL.
I've already read it. I wrote it. I know
Yeah,
you were
no, I'm
talking
telling
to
the
me.
folks who are watching.
I know you were telling. I wanted to be deliberately obtrusive.
No. Anyways, it is a great piece. Okay, so again, this gives you additional optimism about where things are likely to head from here. So, yeah, I guess you mentioned in some of these, maybe we're seeing the green shoots already, but when do you think it's not going to be debatable that folks are saying, oh, okay, we're now beginning to see the
Well,
economy really start to pick up from this stuff?
as you know, my role with Kathy Wood and ARC, you know my role. She was my student. I'm an outside owner. I'm the only individual who owns shares in the company.
I didn't know that actually. So
Oh,
that's
well, she was
fascinating.
my student. I've been involved with her. I rang the bell when it went public. She's just wonderful. She's terrific. All that. I use her sort of as a bellwether. If you know it, she ran up all the way to 160 in her big fund, and then it went back down to 30. During the Biden thing, there crashed the interest rates and
Yep.
all that. It's gone from 30 now to I think it's 70. These are green shoots, Guy. These are real green shoots. Now, I'm fortunate. I'm an investor in that, and I just have a
Okay.
fixed amount there. But bang, but that's the one I use as sort of my bellwether as to the green shoots sprouting. That going from 30 plus to 70 is a really big deal. Now, she's got a lot of other funds as well. The other investment funds, and
Yeah.
she does a market in Bitcoin. She's one of the, I think it's BlackRock, and she and someone else that have markets in Bitcoin. So, but that is the bellwether I look at. If you look at the stocks she owns, and she publishes every day her buys and sells, and all the stocks she owns in the fund, so you can look at what's happening there, and that just gives me great reason to believe that things are going right. They're going really in the right direction. She's my sort of, what is it? Bug in the lantern. What is it? Sparrow in the lantern. As you go coming out of the mine when the
You
sparrow
mean
starts
the
flying.
canary in the coal mine? Yeah.
Canary in mine. Thank you. Not a sparrow.
But a positive one where
Very
hopefully,
positive.
yeah, not
No, it's
dying.
got a long. It's got a long way to go. It's got a long way to go, but it's really positive.
So I can totally see a company like hers being a real early indicator, but
Yes.
it's a market indicator, and the markets are very forward-looking. When do
Yes.
you think the average guy in the street is going to say, "Oh, my life's actually now beginning to feel like it's getting a little better"?
Well, I think you're seeing it, but very, very early stage. And as you're right, Kathy is a forecast of times in the future. You're
Right,
completely right. And stock market is in general. It's not backward looking, it's forward looking
right.
totally. But if you look at some of the recent ones, and I do not play heavy, but the employment numbers are okay. They're not bad. They're doing all right. If you look at the inflation numbers, they're not bad either. They're looking all right. If you look at some of the manufacturing things, other things in there, you're looking at all these things, there's nothing bad on the horizon that I see, and little tiny bubbles that may be sprouts coming in the future currently. And you look at that employment, the unemployment rate dropped. Now you have really weird stuff measuring what's the labor force and all that.
Yep.
And so therefore you really shouldn't count on even 6 months worth of data as being good. But those numbers are not bad. They could be bad, and they're not, and they're modestly, really moderately, modestly positive. And I look to that too, but I'm not expecting those numbers to be really in good shape until maybe a year from now.
Okay.
And then
And
you'll
that
see
that
GDP numbers. You'll see that. You saw what the Atlanta Fed said on GDP numbers, and it's nothing out there is really bad news, and there are little signs of current stuff being good news, and forecasting stuff is great news.
Got it. So yeah, I get the sense you think by the end of his administration, things are going to be rocking. Um, I guess maybe the spirit of the question was, we have the midterms in a little over a year. Do you think it'll show enough forward momentum for people to say, I want this to continue. I'm going to continue to vote for the current administration?
Just having been through so many midterms in my life, and especially with a new incumbent president and stuff,
Yeah.
I can't imagine the Republicans winning the House back, keeping the House. I
Okay.
can't imagine it, but I've been wrong
But that's
before.
more a political call than an economic one, it
Thank you.
sounds like.
That's totally a political call. But we don't need it. Now, I can't, I have a hard time imagining the Republicans losing control of the Senate because of the majority there, and because of what the Senate seats up are. They're very favorable to the Republicans on that. So I have a hard time imagining the Republicans losing the Senate, which gives me a nice thing there on Supreme Court appointments and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
confirmation of department heads and cabinet members and all that stuff. The Senate is an important body for us to have. So I look to those elections as being not, I'm expecting to lose the House, and I'm expecting to keep the Senate, and that makes me very optimistic on the political aspects of the midterms. That there won't be a big change in Congress sufficiently to derail Trump's agenda.
Right. So a divided Congress, just a lot of stuff doesn't get done, but a lot of stuff doesn't get undone either.
But
Yeah.
it's already been done. The
Right.
BBB is did it. I mean, he did it, and we have another year plus to pass other bills too. And
Well, that gets to my last question, which is, all right, Dr. Laffer. So we're off to a good start. I think maybe what you would
yeah,
say, a very good
very
start.
good start. Yeah.
What other changes, reforms, passages would you love to see?
Yeah, well, I'd love to see the medical transparency is the biggest one of all. I'd like to see that more than anything.
Okay, but that's
I
already in the OBBB, right?
Well, it's in there, but it's not in there as being really done. The president needs to focus on this.
Okay.
I would like to see also getting rid of a lot of the 501c3s, not the religious ones, mind you. I'm not taking on the churches, synagogues, and temples, okay? Not today.
Hmm.
But if you just get those 501c3s with endowments of 50 million or more, if you remove their tax advantages, and making it no longer tax deductible to the donors to those, and the earnings on those are no longer tax deductible, tax free. If you got rid of that, you could get a flat rate. I prod the president, both in person and publicly, um, that Reagan got the top rate down to 28%. You're still at 37.
Yep.
I mean, you've got your goal there. You got to beat Reagan. You got to get down to 25, and that corporate tax, 15 would be nice, but wouldn't it be nice just to get rid of the corporate profits tax altogether and just have a flat tax why would you want to tax companies that make high quality products at low cost and eschew the use of lawyers and accountants, et cetera? Why would you want to tax the bejabers out of them? And yet, companies that make crappy products that no one wants at high expense and hires lawyers and accountants just subsidize those. I don't see any logic for discriminating against good companies versus bad companies
Hmm.
in the tax structure. So, what you really want to do is tax the value added of the companies, not whether they're successful or not. So, that means getting rid of the profits tax and putting in a value added tax. That's what you need to do on that. And I would love to see him do something on those lines. I would love to see him use the tax deductions, et cetera, to fund this, to pay for all this stuff, to get it down, and to really reduce that lowest rate to get it to where it's when Reagan left office, the highest rate was 28%, and the lowest rate was 15%, and those were the only two rates. He'd gotten rid of 14 brackets and turned it down to two. He reduced the corporate rate from 46% to 34%. Trump can do all of that. Now we have a lot more brackets. They put him back in again. He can do that, and he has lots of ability to use the tax deductions to as pay-fors to get it through Congress. So I think he's got a lot of great stuff he can do to really make this country great. And I think he wants to do that. I mean, everything I know about the man tells me that he loves America, almost too much all the time, and bumpity rockety rock. But he loves America, and he really is a very competitive man with previous presidents. So I think he'd like to be considered. I think his first term was better than Reagan's first term, and if he does all this stuff, I'll say that I think his second term is better than Reagan's second term. Although Reagan's second term was spectacular. So Trump has a ways to go to really beat Reagan in the second term, but I think he's up to it and he can do it. And I'll just prod him every now and then. If you did this, you could beat Reagan. And I think that's the type of challenge he loves. And I love it too, because there's nothing we want more than prosperity in the U.S. and the world. I mean, peace and prosperity. It's really fun when your wife's your partner and you're making lots of money. Oh my God, isn't that great? Doesn't happen all the time, but it's just really great.
Wow. Well, I got to say, your enthusiasm and optimism is infectious. And I interview a lot of people on this channel who I will say have a lot more concerns, not so much about the president himself or the administration, but just sort of the macroeconomic situation. And it's always a breath of fresh air to have you come on and explain in such detail why you're so enthusiastic here. I'm curious on this potentially simplifying the tax code further, some of the changes that you said you'd love to see. How much of a how much are those on the radar of the current administration?
I talk about them to him all the time. Now, that doesn't mean they're on the radar, but I just keep blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
I did Jerry Brown's flat tax when he ran for president, which was get rid of all federal taxes except for two flat rates, one on business net sales, value added, and one on personal unadjusted gross income, no deductions, no exemptions, no exclusions, no omissions, no credits, no write-offs, none of that crap. We did a 13% flat tax and got rid of all federal taxation. And by the way, Jerry went from eighth in the race in 1992 to second in the race. We would have beaten Bill Clinton if he hadn't made Jesse Jackson his running mate. So there's a lot of popularity for this type of tax in the Democratic Party as well as the country at large. So I think we can get a lot of this stuff in. And by the way, you talk about all these other economists, and I just noticed on the New York Times today there's an op-ed by Larry Summers
Hmm.
how much he hates America and how disappointed he is in America. And it's bad, our cruelty. I'm ashamed of America, I think is what he said. And 5 years ago, Larry Summers was fat and stupid. But with Ozempic, he's fixed fat. But now there ain't no fixing stupid. And I know Larry Summers well. And, frankly, I'm just ashamed of him writing pieces like that, which are patently bad economics and they just cause dissension. This is not a time to be wagging your finger and ashamed of my country. That's just silly stuff. Donald Trump won the House on it. They passed the bill, fair and square. Let's go for it. I don't sit there and yell at Bill Clinton. I thought Bill Clinton was a damn good president. I thought, I mean, I didn't hate Joe Biden either. I really didn't. I mean, I did think he was old. A lot of my friends, I'm 3 years older than Joe Biden. So when I saw some of the problems he was having walking and going up
Hmm.
this, I recognized that in my friends and in me, memory things. And there's something called age onset, but I didn't hate Joe Biden. I didn't say I'm ashamed of America. I mean, I didn't like the policies, but and I'm dear friends with Al Gore. I did the sort of the little blurbs on the front cover of his book, The Future. Three of us did: E.O. Wilson, myself, and Berners-Lee. So I'm really bipartisan in my whole look at the world, and I really respect people. And when I see other people like Larry Summers bashing the content of character of the people, that's just there's no upside to that. Joe Biden wanted to make America a good country. He just wasn't, he was old. That's all. I mean, and Bill Clinton did a great job as president. Again, wouldn't let my daughter intern there, but
Right, right, right.
he did a great job. And Barack Obama, I was very proud of America under Barack Obama. I mean, we proved very strongly to the world we're not a racist nation. We're not. We've got a black president, by God. And he's a pretty cool guy. I mean, University of Chicago faculty, he's very well educated, Harvard Law. I mean, this is a great country in its time. And when we work with Democrats and Republicans, it's time to get over this screaming and hollering and middle fingering people. That's not what we should do. We should just be working with them and see if we can't make it a better place. That's why I'm disappointed that none of the Democrats, not one, voted for this bill. And I know you are too, because I heard you say, don't you think a few of them would have done it if it had been under pressure? I
Right.
don't know about that. I mean, it's a type of politics that I, I just I don't understand. I'd vote for a Democrat, Bill. In fact, I work with Democrats all the time. I am. Jared Polis was my intern at 13 years old. He's governor of Colorado. He's a great governor of Colorado. And it's what the hell's wrong with being a Democrat or being a Republican if the policies are good? No?
Well, it's so funny. I mean, one of the reasons why I really enjoy talking with you, Dr. Laffer, is I do feel like we're somewhat kindred spirits where we look at the world, I think, primarily through I guess I'll call it a practical lens, but you can call it an economic lens, right? Where it's
Yep.
like, we don't care who you are, where you're from, whatever. Just we're trying to solve a problem. Do you have ideas that are additive or not? And if we all have the same goal of more increased prosperity for everybody, you don't
What's
care if
wrong with
it's
that?
red or blue, old or young, yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly true. I use a phrase on that. I shouldn't use it in public, but I still do every now. If you're transgender and want tax cuts, you got to see it at my table. If you're straight and you like tax cuts, you got to see it at my table. I don't give a damn what your social policies are. I care about economic prosperity for one and all.
well, so here's my thought, and tell me if you think differently. I feel like extreme times will hopefully create more unity, right? They'll bring down those barriers. And either
That's what
extreme
I was
times
hoping.
are things get so bad that we have to say, look, what we're doing isn't working. Maybe we should start working together and
Yeah.
therefore things will happen. Or things get so good, the opponents say, you know what? I guess I got to admit I've been wrong. I don't want to just sit out and miss the party. Please, can I come join? Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're hoping we're going to have the latter happen
Yes.
at some point soon.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm hopeful. I really, really want the Democrats to be broad-based. I want the Republicans too to be broad-based. I mean, I don't like lockstep voting. This is not British Parliament. You know, this is America, and you're allowed to be representing something. You don't have to follow lockstep with your party all the way. But I would like to see some of the Phil Grahams and the Kent Hanses and all these guys who were Democrats that we got to co-sponsor our bills under Reagan. I mean, if you remember Reagan and the '86 Tax Act. Now, let me just go through that with you. We dropped the highest tax rate from 46% to 34% in corporations. Okay?
Yep.
We dropped the highest personal income tax rate. It went from 70% down to 28%. We raised the lowest rate from
It's a
12.5%
massive drop.
to 50%. Okay, we did that. We dropped the capital gains tax rate from 50% down. This Steiger Hansen did that. These
Hmm.
are all the things we did. In the '86 Tax Act, when we went from 14 brackets to 2 brackets, the vote in the Senate,
Yeah.
97-3.
Wow.
97-3. Bill Bradley voted for it, tall and pink. Joe Kennedy, Teddy Kennedy voted for it. Joe Biden voted for it. Al Gore voted for it. All of them voted for it there. You know, and you
I'm
look
not
at
sure
now,
we could get a vote on that in Congress if we were voting for world peace today.
I don't think we could. And you know, we also did get rid of the all these deductions, exemptions, and exclusions, which is what I've been talking to you about now.
Yeah.
We did that too. And we did all that stuff. But you know, and I talked with Al Gore. Al Gore's a good friend. I haven't seen him in a while, but I did do the blurbs in his book. He's been over to my house, and he said that bill, the '86 tax bill, was the best bill he ever voted for in economics ever.
Hmm.
And you know, and he's right. And I want that type of bipartisanship to come back to America. And there's no reason why it shouldn't. I love Democrats. I think they're great people. It's the Larry Summers stuff in the New York Times that really gripes my ass, to be real honest with you. I just hate that negative stuff, and I'm ashamed of being an American. Come on, guy. Stop. Work with us. And you know, let's get it. And you know, Larry Summers comes from such privilege that it really sounds like it sounds like whining when I hear him do that. So, well, I'm just
Well,
sorry
I,
about that. I don't
I
mean to.
will raise a figurative toast to you in the spirit of more cooperation and bipartisanship on both sides,
Yeah,
right?
on both
Yeah.
sides. Yeah, of course, it's always on both sides. It's always on both sides. Even it may not be always the biggest game, may not be in each side, but everyone should be that way. I mean, from the lowliest to the highest. John F. Kennedy put it beautifully, and I think I probably did this with you last time, but he said, "No American is ever made better off by pulling a fellow American down."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And we're all made better off if ever any one of us is made better off. And then the next line he said, which was magical: "A rising tide, it raises all boats." We're
Mm.
all in this damn boat together. Rich people should like paying the taxes they pay, and the poor people should like paying taxes they pay. It should be a cooperative thing. Rich people are willing to pay taxes. I mean, of course, there's some cheats in there. Don't get me wrong, but when they think they're being cheated, then they'll fight it. But we should have a tax code that is generally agreed to by rich and poor alike, by old and young alike, by black and white alike, by male and female alike. This is a team sport. We know we have to raise the revenues for government to have government programs. We know that. And we know what's right and fair. If you make 10 times as much as I do, you should pay 10 times as much in taxes as I do. You should. Now, low rate, broad based, flat tax is the right way to go. That's fair. Everyone does that. That's what Jerry Brown did. We went from 8th in the race to 2nd in the race in the Democratic primary with that slogan. I mean, and that's the way to go. And everyone knows it's the right thing to do. And let's just get there and do it, and let's get it bipartisan. And I'm going to live a long time, so I'm going to see whether you're going to be able to carry that message and win for us. I'm counting on you.
What? Well, thanks, and I'm counting on you to keep coming on this channel until you're at least
I will.
137.
I will. I promise we'll do that. But why are you still in California? Just for the record. I mean, is that an
Well,
IQ test?
I may have mentioned this once or twice, but I don't know if I've been like completely public about it, which I will be now. We're in the process of moving to Nevada, a zero income tax state.
Be careful. Make sure you get good lawyers. Just for the record, they go after people who move to Nevada. Just for the record.
Thank
They,
you.
and
I do have the checklist. I am working with professionals to make sure I'm doing everything I can to sever ties so
make
that
sure you do,
California.
because there used to be a story that the California IRS agents, something like 2/3 are with expats. are focused on expat. And if you move to Nevada, they say they don't just challenge your tax return. They file tax evasion charges against you, criminal. And then you have that. It's a different game than just saying you owe back taxes. They really so make it be very, very careful how you do this, please.
I appreciate that very much.
I did it once long ago, as you know, in 2006. I moved to Nashville. I planned it for 3 years beforehand and did that, and I did it all with IRS agents, with lawyers, and I made sure I had everything. And sure as hell, after 3 years, they challenged me, and then I'd given them some benefits in my tax plan and my tax payments. So I said, well, if you do that, I'm going to demand a refund, and then they dropped it.
They dropped it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have been hearing a lot of horror stories about, they basically place levies on your bank account, and they'll take the money out of your bank. Yeah.
They do that stuff, and they're very serious about getting your money. They don't care about you.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
Well, look, I want to end on positivity, and I thought you gave a great soliloquy there. So let's end for unity and fairness and cooperation and prosperity. For folks that would like to follow you and your work between this appearance and your next one on this channel, Dr. Laffer, where should they go?
Oh, I don't know. We have a website, I think. I don't. I have a flip phone, so I don't even know that. But we have a website, the Laffer Center. It's called 1065 Institute, is where they can go and write me on things. You can get a website I have there, the Laffer.
I'll get it and I'll put it up on the screen so folks know.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm glad you got that one on medical transparency on your website. That people should read that and understand how important that is now.
All right. As a reminder, folks, that's at thoughtfulmoney.com/Laffer. All right. Well, in wrapping up here, folks, if you enjoyed this discussion with Dr. Laffer, please let him know that by hitting the like button, then clicking on the subscribe button below. As a reminder, we're trying to get to 150,000 subscribers to this YouTube channel by the end of the month, which is my birthday. So if you haven't yet clicked that subscribe button, please do. Only takes you a second. You'll get alerted when we have new videos, so there's a benefit to you. And the more subscribers we have, the more love the YouTube algorithm gives this channel. So you'll be helping this channel out as well. Also, if you are, would like some help in terms of positioning your portfolio, perhaps to capture a greater share of the prosperity that Dr. Laffer sees ahead, highly recommend you do that by following the guidance of a good professional financial advisor. Ideally one that takes into account all the macro issues that Dr. Laffer has shared with us here. If you've got a good one who's doing that for you, great, stick with them. But if you don't, or you'd like a second opinion from one who does, highly recommend that you consider scheduling a free consultation with one of the financial advisors that Thoughtful Money endorses. These are the firms you see with me on this channel every week. To schedule one of those consultations, just fill out the very short form at thoughtfulmoney.com. As a reminder, these consultations are totally free. There's no commitments involved to work with these firms. It's just a free service that they offer to be helpful. Dr. Laffer, it's always such a pleasure. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. And everybody else, thanks so much for watching.
Talk to you later. Bye, guy.